Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mexico Now Festival, El Podcast. I am Ana Maria Huilars. I'm your host for today. I am an actress, writer, and producer from Mexico based in New York City. And today we are here with Fandango Jarocho Neoyorkino. It's a family-friendly community celebration filled with music and dance courtesy of the Fandanguero community of New York City. This one-night-only event is inspired by Fandango Jarocho, a living cultural tradition over 400 years old from the coastal region of southern Mexico, but infused with distinctive New York influence. Everyone is welcome. The roots of Fandango Jarocho go back to spontaneous jams that would inevitably arise whenever neighborhood rural townships gather at local festivals and markets in Mexico. Performers and artisans would share poetry, theater, food, fashion, and music, charangas, violins, harps, folk songs, and zapateaderos, around a wooden platform called tarima. The sharing spirit of these gatherings expanded across the country, developing into rituals that have inspired meaningful cross-cultural connections. We are here with Julia and Sinuhe, who are part of Fandango Jarocho Newyorkino. I wanted to ask you some rapid-fire questions just to get to know you better. When was the first time you attended a Fandango Jarocho?
My first Fandango was in the year 2000 in Mexico City, actually, with Freddy Vega, who's part of the Los Vega family, who will be visiting New York this fall.
The first time I saw a Fandango and I was part was around the year 93, 94, and it was in Tlacotalpan, Mexico. This big celebration called La Candelaria, Veracruz. I think I was so lucky because it's the most important celebration, Jaranero culture. So I was there, I was so young, and from that February 2nd until today, that is part of my life.
That's beautiful. What is your favorite moment that occurs at a Fandango Jarocho?
There is a moment in the Fandango that it needs everybody being playing and dancing, doing the Fandango together for about an hour, sometimes a little more or a little less. But this moment is when everybody stops thinking, everybody gets like a solid piece. Nobody's thinking the chords on your hand. Nobody's thinking which verse you're gonna sing or who is singing. Nobody's thinking anything. You can notice that something changed in the air and the sound. We transform in something. So I like it. Many cultures in traditional music look for that moment. Many cultures, it says that is something divine. Hear other voices, the harmonics of the instruments melted on the air. That moment is for me like the magical moment in Fandango. They have many beautiful moments, but that one, when the Fandango touched that moment.
I love it when there's the peak of the Fandango, which happens sort of after a few hours of Fandango. Musicians start playing the faster and more intense sones jarochos, and dancers show their best moves, and there's just a sense of party, of collaboration, of community that's really wonderful.
It does sound magical. And now moving a little on. And in the Fandango Jarocho, food is an important element of community creation. What is your favorite Mexican dish?
Well, the classical Fandango or the traditional Fandango food is the tamales. And so whenever you go to a Fandango and the tamales are good, you know that Fandango is going to go great. So I would say tamales is my favorite Fandango food.
That's difficult to ask for Mexicans because Mexican gastronomy is pretty diverse. But talking about fandangos is important because this celebration that I just talked in the first question is La Candelaria. And in Mexico, La Candelaria, it's the mixing of three goddesses of deities. One is La Candelaria, Virgen de las Candelas, Candles Virgin Transformation, February 2nd, but also the West African Yoruba, Abagua cultures that also, this West African root is one of the most important in the Fandango, son jarocho, and in many cultures in Latin America with this West African diaspora. February 2nd is Yemaya's birthday. Yemaya is also water, diosa de las aguas, del mar.
Yeah, a deity of the water and the sea.
Yes, Candelaria is February 2nd, and it's in an island in southern Veracruz because it's surrounded by river. And also Yemaya is water, the same birthday. But also Chalchitlicue, it's another goddess like native, originary from this part of Mexico, central Mexico, and is the god of the waters. And there is this ofrenda, respect that people per thousand of years they are doing tamal for this goddess. So the most important dish is tamales. It's the thank you for the rains, for starting the year and the plantations, going to this relationship with this Mother Earth. It's a mythology, really beautiful and magical. But until today, in Candelaria, it's the day of the tamales. So tamales, they are always in fandangos, one of other way. Almost all the fandangos traditionally, it has tamales. But in the most important fandango celebration, that is la Candelaria, tamales, they are like also most important. So for me, if you ask me what's my favorite dish about this, is tamales.
Perfect. Yeah, they're delicious. And now into the more extended part of the questions. How did Fandango Neoyorkino started and what is its main goal?
Well, Claudia Norman from Celebrate Mexico Now, she contacted me a few months ago and she asked me if we wanted to do something Son Jarocho related for the 20th anniversary of the festival, which I got really excited about. And we figure we could try to get the community together, some of whom are still here in New York City, who started with this movement about 20 years ago with the Fandangos here in New York City. And we figure we can try to get those folks together with new members of the community to do a new Fandango 20 years later. So that's how it started.
That's really interesting. And what would you say is like its main goal?
Well, I think the main goal is to celebrate that history, the history of the Fandango here in New York City, overall, the history of Son Jarocho and Celebrate Mexico Now, how Celebrate Mexico Now has been a supporter of the Son Jarocho movement here in New York City for these couple of decades, and to show new audiences what Son Jarocho is about and how Son Jarocho can help build community through the Fandango.
Amazing. And talking about like all of this community and the influence it has that is based in New York City, Fandango Jarocho is a ritual that was created by different cultural influences in the south of Mexico. How is Fandango Jarocho Newyorkino evolved with influences of New York, it being such an eclectic and diverse city?
I think, as you said, Fandango is the mixing of different cultures that arrived to this Sotavento region in Mexico, southern Gulf of Mexico. And through the fandangos, these cultures form a new tradition. This tradition is still alive. And it makes sense in New York because there are documents in Mexico, like the first fandangos. People didn't speak the same language, but they communicated through music, through dance, food, poetry, traditions. And I think New York is always in this melting of traditions and cultures. We can see that the sound of the fandango in New York, it has a different identity. It doesn't have to sound exactly like the fandango in Mexico, in Veracruz, because we are not that. We learned that tradition. We use the same reason, but it's people from different cultures, and everybody feels welcome. And sometimes they feel, hey, my music, my traditional music, back in my town, maybe in Colombia or maybe in Peru or Chile or Argentina or maybe in West Africa. We have many different stories of people coming saying, hey, that sounds like my music. And I think in New York, the Fandango in New York, it has that. It's always getting these cousins that share the same roots of the music that comprise the Fandango in Mexico.
And talking all about how it creates community despite language barriers in different cultures, it is all about that community and belonging, right? So how do you create those spaces that are inclusive for everyone?
I mean, it's almost a cliche now to say that music is the universal language, right? But it is. And I think that what makes Son Jarocho so conducive to community building is that it's a type of music that the basics of it can be learned fairly quickly. So the basic step or the basic strum on the jarana or a few verses of the songs. And having that first knowledge already allows you to participate in the fandango. Of course, if you want to be a master son jarocho player, then you have to play for decades and practice every day. But if you want to be part of the fandango and learn sort of the beginnings of the music, the beginnings of the dance, you're able to do that, participate, and become fully immersed in this experience. Now, the fandango, I think, also welcomes people to just sit and watch, to participate by providing the energy, providing the cheering, providing the laughter and the good times with the community that's just there as not necessarily active participants in the fandango, but participating by being there and supporting.
And how do you continue this practice outside of the ritual of including people in community building?
Some of us perform this type of music professionally, and so we do our own training and our own practice to perform on a stage this music. But other people do it as well just for the fandango, because in the fandango is a sort of stage. The idea is that you go to the fandango to show that you're good at it, right? And that you're getting better, and that you've been practicing your art as well. Because the fandango is a community space, that doesn't mean that you don't want to be good when you're at the fandango, right? And so you can either do it professionally and continue your practice at home or in the professional setting, or you can do it in community, but also continue your practice outside of the fandango.
I think also we are always thinking in organize more fandangos, what traditional celebrations, it games through the calendar, like Candelaria is coming, or La Rama is coming, or Fandango de Dia de Muertos. But also we share this like weekly. We meet every week, we teach, and I think it's part of our life. But as Julia says, like everybody is thinking, when is the next Fandango? I learned this new verse. I learned this dance step. And yeah, something that I like to say is in fandangos, jarochos, you doesn't have to be a professional musician or dancer. You doesn't have to be Mexican. You doesn't have to be jarocho. And it's talking about this inclusive and also this ritual, the circular ritual, as Julia says, including the people that is not dancing, that is just watching, being part. And this circular ritual validates everybody face to face, as many circular dances, rituals in different cultures. But this validation, somebody sings and somebody's going to answer you. You're going to dance with somebody and you're going to do contrapuntos in the dance. And there's always this relationship to validate everybody and make you part. So that it's related. The questions for me, they are related, because every day you are thinking in that, like how we're going to validate, how we want to open safe spaces, people feels good.
And you were saying that people are looking forward for the next gathering. And I have heard you mentioning in the past that this tradition doesn't need to be safe, but rather saves people. How have you seen or experienced the celebration of life, community, and the urban helping people? And what would you say are some of the tools that it offers?
When you are a migrant, you need to recreate a family. You need people around, and the fandangos give you that. Give you as a family celebration this moment with your people. Everybody is aware of everybody's life, and everybody asks how you been, how is everything going. But yeah, I think that's part of the magic of fandangos.
Yeah, and I think that we've all seen people in our community here in New York, and people who come from other communities outside of New York on the East Coast, who started coming to Fandango sort of, perhaps they ran into a Fandango, they attended, they start making connections, and suddenly they become an integral part of this community and become sort of alive for it. Like we've seen folks who were shy, who were it felt like they didn't have that much of a network here in the city, that, perhaps were a little lonely, and suddenly they run into this group of people who are all communicating through music, through community, through events that they put together, through celebrations. And that becomes their community, that becomes their network, their group of friends. So we've seen how yeah, how the fandango saves, somebody who might be a little adrift, who might be a little lost in the big city or whatever it is, and the fandango becomes their family. Their fandango becomes their place where they can, come and express their feelings, come and create art, and that has been really wonderful to see. And I think for me personally, having gotten into son jarocho and practicing son jarocho really like saved me in the sense that made me a more creative person, maybe a happier person, maybe gave me the opportunities to travel, gave me so I don't mean to sound dramatic. It's like it saved my life, but maybe it did in the sense that I would have had a much different life if I hadn't been because of Son Jarocho and the Fandango and the community. That would probably not have been as satisfactory or as fulfilling as my life has been since I started practicing Son Jarocho. So it's really a place making music, not only a community making music where you find your place in there. You find and you can have a fandango in a classroom or in a public plaza or in your living room, and you're creating a place where community is built. And so it has that. It's a community building, but also place making activity.
Yeah, it's, for example, Julia and me, we know each other almost for 20 years. We saw our kids grow and with many people here. And I think that's beautiful how we can, through the Fandango, like share a lot of life. We are like a net. I mean, my son knows everybody here in the Fandango. For my son, it was so important, the Fandango here in New York, because he grew in the Fandangos here. So for him, it's important. And now, as a teenager, he was, we go to the Fandango again, okay. But later, he's asking, how is everybody? And he loves to go to Fandangos, sometimes not to play, but because everybody is like his cousins or aunts. As Julia said, this community, but also feels like a family because there are many years, many people. Every time is coming new people, and it's welcome. But also there are certain pieces in this fandango community in New York that we know each other for almost 20 years doing the same fandangos, and I think that's something beautiful. Not everybody can say that. It's a privilege for me.
That is beautiful, and it's beautiful how it manages to create a community, and what you were saying also, like a placemaking. Why do you believe that being in spaces that foster cultural tradition through community and inclusion are important to experience and support?
I think that's something beautiful about New York that offers these different cultural rituals that you can go and have this experience. We already know, we already talk how it's important to create community, how it's important to cultivate cultural background in a city as New York that offer different traditionalities and new versions of that, New York versions of that. And I think it's a plus to live here that you can go a Fandango Jarocho and also you can go to a salsa or rumba concert, and after that you can go to a Greek music. And I don't know, just to say something, but the opportunity to have this experience like a Fandango Jarocho without have to go to southern Veracruz or to Mexico, take advantage of that. Use it.
Yeah, well, I think that the more connected we are as humans, as community, I think the more we're able to, I think, be a better society. And like, I don't mean to get like super like philosophic or get too deep into it, but I think that, I mean, we see how much division there is, right? How much disagreement, and I think that we see a lot of violence. We see, I think, a lot of discontent. And I think that being connected, having a space where there's music, where we're valuing where we come from or where other people came from. It's like what Sinuhé is saying. It doesn't have to be Mexican music. It can be music from another place in the country, in this country, in another country, but it's a place where we are honoring roots and tradition and learning about that tradition. And we are in constant learning as well, not because we've been doing this for years and years means that we know everything about it. I go to Fandango and I still learn new things. I still see, something, a verse that somebody said or a step that somebody did on the tarima. And I'm like, whoa, this is new to me. And so I think it's important for us as people to continue to learn, to continue to connect, to continue to create things together so that we can, be contributors of good things to society and try to perhaps overcome these times of just conflict. I think there is a lot of conflict right now, which I think music and culture and learning and community can help overcome.
Thank you so much. That is beautiful. And I'm so excited to go and participate in Fandango Jarocho Neoyorkino at Mexico Now Festival. Remember to visit Fandango Jarocho Neoyorkino at Mexico Now Festival from November 20 to November 24 at the Chelsea Factory in New York City. Thank you so much, Sinuhé and Julia, for being here and for everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.